All right, so let's talk about the brakes. I had a question in the comments on one of the previous videos talking about, hey, what brakes are those? So when you do a Coyote swap on a first-gen Mustang, a lot of times you're going to get the Mustang to kind of independent front suspension setup, and the most easiest, most readily available, and the most cost-effective brake setup for the front end is going to be exactly what you're seeing right here behind me, which is a GM metric caliper setup with an 11-inch rotor. Some kits are a little bit larger than 11-inch, which I think they make it like 11.25-inch diameter rotor, but for the most part, it'll be about 11-inch rotors. These brake setups were most commonly found on 1978 to 83 Chevy Malibus, 77 to 87 El Caminos, the 77 to 88 Monte Carlo, but for the most part, every division had them. Pontiac made them for the Grand Prix, the Grand Am, the Le Mans, the Bonneville. Oldsmobile had them on the Cutlass and in various forms. Buick also sold them with the Century, the Regal, and the Grand National. So the common bore sizes for the caliper that is on here is going to be about 2 3/4 of an inch or 2.5. The caliper is a steel kind of cast iron caliper, and it was used to replace. Now, it does have pretty decent stopping power. For the most part, if you have a street-driven vehicle, so talking specifically about first-generation Mustang, if you are driving around on the street, having fun on the on the street, goofing around, doing all that stuff, it's going to be plenty of brake for you. These are definitely capable of locking up the wheels. The best part is you can use these for manual brake application as well as power brake application. The consumables for the GM metric calipers are extremely affordable. Rotors are cheap, calipers are cheap. It'll take just about any DOT3 or DOT4 fluid, and super simple to maintain. Another note about these calipers is they are a floating style. So you see you have a little pin that allows you to, the caliper to float, follow the rotor. So, prevents having kind of that pad slap or knockback when you're driving and stuff. So make sure that you have constant pressure, brake pressure whenever you're applying the brakes. So now we're at the rear axle of the Mustang. This brake setup, and I guess you could say this brake chassis or architecture, is so versatile that you can even use it for your rear axle brakes. Other than the rotor not having machined out work so that the bearing runs onto a spindle, you basically just have your simple rotor that just goes right onto your axle flange, and then you have your brake calipers that are measured, of course, to fit onto your large bearing flange, which that's what I have on my rear axle. And for the most part, it is the identical caliper as what I have on the front, with the exception that this has parking brake, a parking brake function to it. So if I ever pull the parking brake lever, brakes apply with a worm gear, I believe, like a mechanical worm gear. That way it's not having constant pressure on the fluids. So these GM metric calipers, I've seen these used on a ton of circle track cars. So it's used in many forms of motorsports, as well as just resto mods if someone just needs to get away from those drum brakes that vintage cars kind of tend to have. It's a good disc brake option that doesn't require a lot of extra things added to it or added to the chassis to make them work. Now, in this little phase that I'm going through with the rebuilding, revising, getting bigger and better components onto the car, one thing I am looking at, getting the big brake kit along with the spindles for this car is going to do a lot of good with adding that stopping power, because as we all know, larger rotor gives you more leverage against the rotating of that wheel in the front end and stuff like that. So big brake kit is definitely something I'm looking into. Probably going to go with the Willwood setup, and I'm currently investigating on getting the 14-inch rotor, being that I have 18-inch wheels. So if anyone has any other questions about some of the equipment that's on the car, feel free to just drop the comment below, and I'll start making some video responses back to your comments. If you want some information, or you want to know why did I do this, or why did I do that, or how does this work, or can that work for maybe my application, if you give me enough detail, maybe we can have a nice little dialogue back and forth to double check that. But for the most part, I appreciate you watching. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.